Which one helps you the most? Skill or camera and lens? Recommended software for easy focus stacking. How do you store and back up your photos? The sharpest macro lens for Sony. How many megapixels are needed for high quality prints? How are you doing financially now with your YouTube channel? Good morning. My laptop recently broke because I managed to have it in the same bag as a water bottle. So I haven't been able to work or edit any videos lately because I also am out traveling, so I cannot use any other computer. So today I figured I will do this Q&A video. I asked you recently if you have questions for me about macro photography or anything else. And I have not looked at any of these questions yet, but I plan on doing it now and answering some of them. Matthew Stern asks, what will you do when you reach 100,000 subscribers? I don't think I will do that much. I will certainly embrace the moment and feel very thankful that I decided to start a YouTube channel about photography, because this has been without a doubt the most rewarding, fun project I've ever done. And I'm just so thankful that there are people who want to watch these videos, because without that there wouldn't be any point, right? But I will probably do like a small celebration video to answer your question. How many shots of a subject do you usually take in order to get a good keeper? Good question. I think it also depends a bit on if I'm doing a stack or single shots, but I would probably view one stacking attempt that could be like 10 or 20 photos as one photo, because either it works or it doesn't. And in that context, usually I come home with around 500 photos from a photo walk, and usually I think the ideal time for a macro photography photo walk for me is around 1.5 to 2 hours, because then I am excited all the way through. I have enough time to get some good photos, but I don't spend so much time that I become too bored with it all. And of those 500 photos, I would say that maybe 3 are photos that I'm happy with, that I will post on Instagram and that I will regard keepers. And then maybe 15 of them are photos that are good enough for me to keep in my Lightroom catalog for the future, because they were like decently good, but not like ideal. So basically I delete the rest of the photos, because otherwise they would take too much space and I would have too hard a time to manage all the photos. What do you do with your pictures? Besides Instagram and YouTube, do you have any projects or anything? Actually, no, I don't really do anything with my photos except posting them on social media. And I mean, at some point I will maybe do something with them, maybe try to do some exhibition or whatever, but no, I think for me photography is very much about the fun in taking a photo and editing it and just looking at it and feeling like, yeah, I took a good photo, and that's enough for me. And of course sharing it with other people, but yeah, for me my ideal way of sharing my photos is in YouTube videos where I talk about the process of taking them, and that's enough for me. I mean, you could view each of my YouTube videos as an exhibition with thousands of visitors, and for me that's great. That's all I need, and I'm very happy with that, and I don't feel like I need to do anything more, not right now at least. How do you store and back up your photos? Good question, and a pretty hard one. I was considering getting a SONY for a long time, like a small computer that sits on your desk with a lot of hard drives in it. But in the end I decided not to get a SON because these are expensive, especially if you want a lot of storage. And another reason I don't like a SON is that you only have the data locally. So if my house would burn down, or if there would be like thieves coming in and taking in everything, I would lose everything. They would maybe take the SON, or the fire would take the SON, and then I don't have anything. And I really want to make sure that my backup is very, very secure. And then you can argue, yeah, but you can connect the SON to a cloud service to back up your SON to the cloud service. I looked into that, and that is actually very expensive, very, very expensive. And I haven't even mentioned that a SON has lots of maintenance going on. There could be security bugs in the software, the hard drives could break down, you have to switch them regularly, like there's so much work involved in a SON, so I don't really think it makes sense. Instead, I found a very simple and very cheap solution that I would argue is more secure and requires less work than a SON. And that is that I bought a very big USB hard drive, 18 terabytes, which is much more than I need. I think currently, including all my YouTube videos and everything, I have around 7 terabytes of data. And then I have that connected to my laptop when I'm at my desk. And then I use Backblaze for backup. And Backblaze has this great personal plan where you spend, I think it's $70 per year for unlimited backup of one computer and one external drive. So I have access to all my data. On that external drive I keep like old YouTube videos and stuff that I don't access that often because of course it's slower than my laptop drive. I have 2 terabytes in my laptop on an SSD for like my Lightroom library and stuff that I'm working on. And then I have an offsite backup of everything at Backblaze. And actually one time I managed to drop my hard drive at the floor, so it broke. So I had a chance to test this backup and it worked great. I could order a new drive from Backblaze with all my data on it. It arrived quickly and it was easy to restore it. So I can really recommend this solution for backing up your photos. The sharpest macro lens for Sony. A lot of people ask me what is the sharpest macro lens, and honestly I think that is the wrong question to ask, because 99% of all macro lenses that have ever been created are really, really sharp. It turns out it's very easy to make a sharp macro lens in my experience. So there are only a few exceptions of lenses that are not sharp. One would be Micael 200mm that I recently reviewed, and the other would be the Micael 85mm. Those are unsharp, really unsharp, at least at open apertures. But other than that, like pretty much every macro lens I have used, and it's quite a lot of them, they are really, really sharp at all apertures. So I don't think you should worry about sharpness, honestly, when you buy a macro lens. Worry about the other things. How big is the lens? How will it handle? What is the price? Do you like the way the pictures look? Stuff like that. And don't worry about the sharpness. This is an interesting question. Which one helps you the most? Skill or camera and lens? And isn't this the age-old question of photography? There is so much discussion about this, that people are too focused on gear when they should instead focus on just becoming good photographers. And yeah, I mean, definitely skill, I would say, is more important than gear overall, both in regular photography and in macro photography. At the same time, I mean, you need certain equipment to be able to take good photos. For example, if I would only have a full frame camera with a one-time magnification macro lens, say that I would have the old Canon 100mm, a classic macro lens, I wouldn't be able to take as good photos as I do with the equipment that I use now, because then I would need to crop in so much that I lose too much detail, because I need more magnification than one time. So I mean, to answer your question, skill in general is of course more important and what you should focus on, but you should also do your research. What kind of gear do you need to take the kind of photos you want to take? What is the minimum requirement? And then just get that. Usually, whatever kind of photography you do, you can get a very cheap setup that can take beautiful photos. Right, let's take some. Oh my god, the mosquitoes are coming. Let's take some questions from YouTube as well. How many megapixels are needed for high quality prints? I'm sorry, I'm really not the right person to answer this, because I've not done that much printing. What I can tell you from my small experience with this is that sometimes I visit like photo exhibitions, and they write what number of megapixels the camera had, like what model it was. And what I can say is that if you have around 25 megapixels or more, you can print very big without it looking bad, even when you inspect the picture closely. But I mean, if you look at analog cameras that were dominant for a long time, a 35mm shot is only around 5, maybe 6 megapixels, and you see a lot of those, right, on photo exhibitions printed big. And yeah, they aren't super sharp when you look very close, but they look good when you walk around in the same room as the picture, even when it's like 1.5 meters tall. So yeah, it really comes down to your requirements in terms of sharpness. Of course, if you want a picture that covers a whole wall that is very sharp even when you're standing right in front of it, yeah, then maybe you need 60 megapixels. But most pictures aren't viewed in that fashion, right? And also, can I review the new Sony crop sensor camera when it comes out? Now it has been announced, the A6700. I think it's great that Sony finally updated their APS-C line. They had used the same sensor since the A6000, I think, so it was really time for an update. No, I will not review that camera. In general, I don't think it is super interesting to review specific cameras for macro photography, because I think the camera is probably one of the least important aspects. Like, basically you could divide all macro photography cameras into two categories. Either it's an Olympus camera that has automated fast bracketing with a flash, and that is a major advantage, and that is why I use them these days. And then you have all the other cameras, because when it comes to image quality, I mean, it doesn't matter that much if you're using a Micro Four Thirds camera, an APS-C camera, or a full frame. It doesn't matter what brand you use. I think, like, use the camera you feel comfortable with. And if you want to do deep stacks handheld, I recommend to get one of the newer Olympus cameras, because they are great at this. If you don't need that, you can buy pretty much any camera made in the last 10 years, and you will be able to get world-class macro photos. As simple as that. Do you have any favorite or highly recommended destinations for macro photography? Not really. I mean, I watched a few videos by Thomas Shahan, for example, when he visits this cloud forest in, what is it, like Peru or something. That looked amazing. I want to go there someday. I also heard that there are some great photography opportunities in Madagascar, I think. But I mean, I enjoy the process of taking photos of simple everyday insects and trying to perfect the craft and trying to make as beautiful photos as possible, photographing the ordinary insects. I am completely fine with that, and especially in my life situation where I have small kids. I don't have like time to travel, because I don't want to be away from my family too much at this stage in my life. Maybe later when the kids grow up I will travel more, or probably I will, but at this point I'm fine with just like 99% of my photo walks are me just going outside my house, maybe up to 1 kilometer away from my house, and just going around in places with a lot of vegetation and flowers and looking for insects, and that's enough for me. Sometimes I do a small excursion, maybe 20-30 kilometers from my house, but it's very rare that I travel for macro photography. Only situation I do that is if it's winter and I really feel like I need to photograph insects for a video or for a project or something. Then I might go to the Mediterranean countries like Spain or Portugal or France. But other than that, no, it's personal, and for me, I'm perfectly happy with just photographing in my backyard. Is a working distance of 14 millimeters too close for live bugs? Yes and no. A lot of people focus a lot on working distance. I don't. For me, the ideal working distance is around 5 centimeters, as you get with a high magnification macro lens like the ones from Laowa. And the reason for that is that it is enough not to scare most insects away, but it's also close enough to be able to get a very stable shot and a nice focus stack. Because the longer away your insect is from the camera lens, the harder it is to keep the camera steady and to get a steady shot, especially if you're stacking, because then you often want to hold the leaf that the insect is sitting on with the same hand that you support your lens with, and that's not possible if you have too long a working distance. So for me, the ideal working distance is around 5 centimeters. I actually get annoyed if the working distance is like 10 centimeters or more, because that makes it harder for me. At the same time, of course, there are insects like dragonflies, for example, that are very skittish, and they require a longer focal length, a longer working distance, and I recognize that. But I don't photograph these kinds of insects too much. What I do is I walk around, look for insects, and whenever I find one that does sit still, even when my lens is very close, I photograph it. And that's around maybe 10 or 20% of all insects that I spot. So you just gotta be patient and wait for the ones that are okay with you photographing them. And it's often hard to know in advance. For example, most times a fly is very, very skittish. But sometimes you find these flies that just sit there, even when you spend like 10 minutes taking photos of it at this distance, it just sits there. Sometimes I even think the fly is dead, then I like push my finger against it and it flies away. So we're just gonna wait for these insects. To answer your question, is 14 millimeters enough? Yeah, you can take some nice macro photos at 14 millimeters of working distance, but it's a bit too little, I think, to work comfortably. I would recommend you to get at least 4 centimeters. Another issue, besides you pushing the lens against the insect, is that you will push the lens against the flower or leaf or branch that the insect is sitting on, and that will make it a lot harder. Also, it will be really hard to light your scene, because the light will have to come like straight from above when you're that close, and that doesn't always make for the nicest lighting. You might also be wondering, why do I just walk all the time in this video? And that is because I'm first of all, I'm trying to avoid the mosquitoes, because I'm in the northern parts of Sweden and there are a lot of mosquitoes here in the summer, and if I don't walk they will catch up to me. Also, I'm trying to burn some calories. I try to take a walk every morning and try to lose some weight, so I combine exercise with making this video. Let's see what else we have. What are your thoughts about AI? Oh, this is an interesting one. Let's see. I think someone made a good analogy, and that is when photography was invented. A lot of painters were very upset because they could see that, oh, someone could just click a button on a camera and replicate what I spend years sometimes making. This is really bad for painters. I think this changed with AI, where you can generate pretty much any photo or picture you want in just a few seconds. I think it's very similar to that, right? But now the victim is the photographers. But I'm not too worried, because painting still exists, right? There is a market for paintings. And what I've learned throughout life is that everything that was ever invented and popular among people will always continue to exist. Sure, you will not have the same kind of market for photography as you had once. It will be more a niche thing. It will maybe be less people interested in it. But there will still be lots of people enjoying photography. Enjoying taking photos, enjoying looking at photos, enjoying buying expensive artsy photos. I think so. So I mean, also I tend to try not to worry about things that are inevitable, because there's nothing we can do. AI is here, it will become better and better, and yeah, let's just try to embrace it, try to find ways to live with it, and try to maybe make it part of your process in some instances. How are you doing financially now with your YouTube channel? Do you make enough money to make a living? Yes, I do actually. I've seen a good increase in my income this year actually, and now I'm kind of permanently over the edge where I can make a living, which is really nice. What has happened surprisingly to me is that more and more brands reach out to me and want to sponsor my videos, and I've become better at knowing my value, so I request more money, much more money than I did earlier, and the brands say yes, to my amazement. So that's great. Recommended software for easy focus stacking. Yeah, what I use mostly is Photoshop and Helicon Focus. I love these two. I think Photoshop is slightly better when you have a bit more of a shaky stack and you need to do a bit more manual work to get it to work. And also when the stack is small, like up to 5 photos, I think Photoshop is great. I have a video about that. Search my name and Photoshop focus stacking and to see how it's done. But what I use mostly these days is Helicon Focus, which is like a special made program to focus stack macro photos. And the reason I use this is that with the OM1, with Olympus auto bracketing cameras, the stacks are so good, so nicely aligned, so most of the time Helicon Focus can just put it together very easily, and I don't need to do much work at all beyond the software doing its thing, so I'm really happy with that. And I know of course that there is another software called Serene Stacker that is maybe even more popular than Helicon, and Serene Stacker is probably great, but when I compared them, I personally thought that Helicon was a bit more intuitive and easy to use, so that's what I'm working with. Okay guys, I think that's enough for this video. Thank you so much for submitting questions. I didn't have time to answer all of them, but I took a few at random, and I hope you learned something. And well, soon I will get my new computer, so I'll be able to work on regular videos again. So see you again in a few days. Bye bye. Nej, Thea, ge mig den. Oj, den här är känslig, man ska inte leka med den.